appear to be caught in a temporal wake.
Close. You're actually caught in the SF Vortex.
Sir, the vortex is collapsing.
Hold your course, Mr. Hawk. I must follow them back.
That's right, because this weekend marks the premiere of First Contact, and the gap will close between generations.
We've had a loss of signal and telemetry here.
Then try adjusting the vertical, and you'll see what it's like to skim the surface of Mars at breakneck speed in the newest IMAX flick.
This Millennium Group, they really believe all that stuff?
I'll save that question for our War Room panelists when we decide if Millennium is too dark. Be sure to strap yourself in as we prepare to engage on a wild ride. So, is everybody ready for the flight of your life?
You think I want to go to the stars? I don't even like to fly. I take trains.
Hi, everybody. I'm Roger Lodge, and you have tuned to SF Vortex, which is definitely a smart choice because we have all the latest on your favorite sci-fi shows and movies. And coming up in our War Room today are shows like Millennium too dark and scary? Well, stay tuned to hear what you had to say and what our War Room panelists, Mark Altman, Robert Burnett, and Suzanne Gibson think as well. All right, folks, at last, it's the weekend we've all been waiting for. No, not the SF Vortex Marathon. That's coming up in a few weeks. This weekend, it's the debut of the new Star Trek movie, First Contact. Now, the latest voyage for the crew was to Mann's Chinese Theater in Hollywood for the world premiere. And naturally, we were invited along to do what we do best, to bring the stars right into your living room.
This is the first Star Trek film that doesn't have the original cast in it, Kirk and Spock, etc. And I think this is much more of an action-adventure film.
I was watching it on Friday with Major Roddenberry, and she got very emotional at the end. She said Gene would have been so proud of this movie because it's exactly what he wanted as far as Star Trek was concerned.
It has a certain darkness to it and a certain girth to it that some of the other films may not have had, though they're all great also. But this film is really, really going to make the audience so happy.
Report!
Main power's offline. We've lost shields. Our weapons are gone.
It's a war movie, obviously, but it doesn't seem afraid to tackle questions and allow characters to have emotional growth.
Are you familiar with physical forms of pleasure?
If you are referring to sexuality, I am fully functional.
I think she is fascinated by his intellect. I mean, I think he's the only intellect she's ever encountered that is kind of as powerful as hers.
While Data and the Borg Queen are swapping hydraulic fluid, the Enterprise crew has returned to the 21st century to stop the Borg from disrupting Earth's history, specifically the first warp test.
Tomorrow morning, when they detect the warp signature from your ship and realize that humans have discovered how to travel faster than light, they decide to alter their course. They make first contact with Earth, right here.
Here?
My character is a totally sort of a throwback to the 60s, which allows people to recognize that this hero, the one that accomplishes this great event, is no more other than any person that they know. It's just a continuation of who we all are.
You think I want to go to the stars? I don't even like to fly. I take trains.
All right, don't get nervous. Don't worry. We didn't give away the ending. You see, the Borg cube is destroyed early on in the movie, And trust me, folks, there's a lot more to the story than that. Remember, the title of this one is First Contact, not Attack of the Board. All right, there's another new film that hasn't had all the hype as First Contact has, but it's definitely one you don't want to miss. It's the latest offering from the nice folks over at the IMAX Theater, and not only is it out of this world, it's also in 3D.
This is L5. We've had a loss of signal and telemetry here.
L5, First City in Space, is a look at our future according to the educated guess of some of today's leading scientific minds. What do the rocket scientists think we'll be doing 100 years from now? Well, among the mundane tasks of daily routine on a city floating in space, we'll be able to skim the surface of Mars at breakneck speed, cruise by a passing comet, and, of course, land on other planets.
It does show that people of many nationalities have come together and live together and work together, and instead of being different countries, you now have the population of Earth that is expanding into the solar system, and it's a common goal for the people who are there.
The story of L5 is obviously fiction, but everything you see was constructed to the latest NASA specifications for a real, self-sustaining space colony. And special new 3D glasses bring the action right into your lap.
I think one of the advantages of IMAX 3D in telling a story such as this, which is set in the future, it adds an element of texture and spatial quality that extend the range of the film language and allow you to believe that you're really here.
You got to see that, folks. It's really terrific. L5, First City in Space, is now showing on one of those 3-story tall screens at more than 130 IMAX theaters back down there on Earth. Have a good time. Be sure to check your local newspaper to find the nearest IMAX theater near you. You know, sci-fi materialized in a huge way at the Cable Ace Awards last weekend. Congratulations are in order to The Outer Limits, everybody, huh? There you go. A very well-deserved award, I might add. And this week's syndicated episode, Trial by Fire, which is a rerun for those of you who missed the first time around, was also nominated for Best Writing in a Dramatic Series. Now, if you liked ID4, you're going to love this one. Those pesky aliens come down and force the president into making his first galactic foreign policy decision. And other news in the sci-fi world finds John Delancey returning to Voyager, as Q is sent to make a half-Q, half-human with none other than Captain Janeway as the mother. Be sure to let us know what you think of that one. Boy, do I have a thing for Janeway. Anyway, another viewer, Annalise Harabedian, wrote in regards to the renewal of the 5th season of Babylon 5. She says it would be a crime of the worst nature to force the creator of Babylon 5, J.M. Straczynski, to stuff the remaining 2 chapters of his story into one season. Boy, I couldn't agree with you more, Annalise. And, you know, we were actually at the set earlier this week on Babylon 5 set, and unfortunately, we don't know anything more than you folks do. Not until this summer. Stay with us, folks. Coming up, there's going to be a battle in the war room.
I become capability. I become the horror. But we know we can become only in our heart of darkness.
Has Millennium tapped into your darkest nightmare, or is it just another detective show? That's the War Room debate when SF Vortex returns. All right, welcome back to SF Vortex. Now, folks, the most hyped new arrival this season, believe it or not, wasn't our show. It was Millennium. And the big question is, has Chris Carter taken the darkness too far? That's our first topic in the War Room, and look who's joining us today. What a cast. Mark Altman is here, editor of Sci-Fi Universe magazine and co-author of The Captain's Log, which has a new supplement, The Guide to DS9, Voyager, and The Next Generation movie. Also here is Robert Burnett. He is Sci-Fi Universe's critic at large and also a feature...
Maybe not for long.
Depending on what he says. Wow, tough room. And he's also a terrific feature film editor. And there's a newcomer to the War Room, folks. It is Suzanne Gibson, the producer of Hour 25 on KPFK Radio in Los Angeles, and she's also an art director as well. Let's get started. Millennium, as we all know, all the hype. It's been on the air for 4 weeks now. Is this show too dark? Even TV Guide is questioning this. Suzanne, start us off.
Boy, I don't think so. I think it's teetering right on the edge. I think it's
taking a very, very fine line here. I think it's very deliberate in the violence it has, but I think it's making a decided point. It wants you to shudder and actually turn away from it because you want to be afraid of what you're seeing.
Too much violence, in your opinion?
Well, no, but it's not sanitized the way that most TV violence is. If you saw somebody in an ordinary series getting a gunshot wound, if you saw it in real life, it would be actually probably banned on television because what really is real is probably obscene.
Mark Altman, you agree?
Well, no, I tell you I don't, actually. I think there's too much violence right now in our society. Not that television is to blame, but the fact is this show is not providing an allegory. It's not showing us how do we deal with the violence. It's just grotesqueness for the sake of grotesqueness. And, you know, the stories just don't compel me. I think that they're using the gross-out factor to entertain, and that's just not enough. That I don't expect that from my science fiction. I want more than that.
I think if I want that much darkness and that much horror, I'll watch a New York Jets game. That's my Robert, what do you think?
Well, I have to agree with Mark. I think darkness is good up to a point, if it has a point. I don't think Millennium has shown that there is a larger point to what's going on. I mean, Clockwork Orange, Apocalypse Now, these are films that use darkness and they use violence for a much greater purpose.
But
and I haven't seen that in
The problem that I have here is not necessarily the violence. They're attracting you at a very emotional level here, but they haven't backed it up with giving you a character here in Frank Brown that you can also get an emotional, Pink Black, that you can get an emotional reaction to. Yes.
Very impressive.
I watched the show. I think the problem is he is so cold and so removed that you cannot relate to him. Okay?
I haven't seen this guy smile in 4 weeks.
No, and he has not only
that. That's right. Darker
Roger
and darker
makes a very good point.
Colder.
Thank you. The guy is the most dour character. Now, Lance Henriksen, I think we all agree, is a wonderful actor.
Yes.
But he sits there. He never smiled. He's with his family. He never smiled. I mean, this guy.
Well, what's his emotional
is so
response
dour.
to this? He's not outraged. He's seeing a new serial killer, sometimes at work in his same
The
building.
best thing about
every
Millennium
episode.
is it's providing jobs to all the space cast. I mean, you have James Morrison, who was on, who was wonderful, and this week we had, you know, and on X-Files we had Morgan Weiser and stuff, but it's nice. And
he doesn't have a chemistry with anybody like you have with Skolder.
You're right.
Well, Megan Gallagher, his wife, he has every episode. He sits with his wife in bed and discusses
yes, but
philosophy.
I still don't buy
What's
it.
the
I
show
don't
about?
see the chemistry
They
between
sit there
them.
for
They're
10 minutes
still
and have
removed
lectures
from
about
each
the
other.
nature of good and evil, and it's very pedantic, and it's not advancing the plot.
They need to go to an amusement park one episode,
Well,
just
they
to
have a
hang out
lot
and
of
have some
directions.
cotton candy.
They can actually take this show, but I think that it's early days yet. I think often many companies are so quick to cancel a series before it's had a chance to find its level yet.
It's a very expensive show, but I definitely agree. Give it a chance. Let it see. You know, give it some time, and certainly they'll have a chance to see what's working, what's not, and turn it around.
Very good. Let's move on. Mark Rivera, one of our faithful viewers, okay? He writes, Millennium doesn't have character chemistry going for it. It has Lance Henriksen, which we've all agreed is terrific, okay? Yeah. But is it enough to carry the show? Start us off, Mark.
You know,
by the way, I've never seen you this fired up. You're on a roll tonight, but go ahead.
Give me something besides Star Trek to talk about.
We're going to talk about Star Trek.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. What I want to say is basically he needs someone to play off of. In X-Files, you have Scully and Mulder. Right. There's great chemistry. Even when the shows don't work, the plots don't work, you have that element. But with Frank Black, you really don't have that, and he internalizes everything so much that there's nothing for you as a viewer to become absorbed in.
Suzanne, what do you think?
I agree. He's so much of a loner that he doesn't have anyone. They've tried to give a little bit of this with this police detective that he does with, but I don't think it's so watered down. In essence, he has a little conflict in the beginning. The man says, you know, where are you coming up with these things? I don't buy it. But at the end of every episode, he says, you know, you were right. I should have listened to you in the beginning. And you don't have that conflict.
Every episode.
But, you know,
every episode.
There is 10 weeks now.
There
He's been
is
saying I should have
precedence for
listened to you.
single character drama. A lot of the detective fiction of recent years, especially people like Andrew Vox and James Burke, have written very incredibly intelligent characters that are compelling. And Frank Black could be just as compelling.
You know why he's
if
not?
they allowed him to grow.
I'll tell you why he's not. Frank Black, Brown, Orange, whatever you want to call him. You know why he's not compelling? He's not compelling because the stories don't have a sense of internal logic. You don't believe. He'll turn to Roger and say, let's see, Roger was at Trader Vic's last night.
You darn right I was.
And you know, I think you really like that Chase Masters. No, I mean, you know,
she's terrific.
He has all these things that he figures out, but not intuitively, just because the plot says he should know this. And he puts these pieces together indiscriminately, and it makes no sense.
And all right, hold on, real quick. Let me go around the table. We've got about 45 seconds left. So, as a whole, is the whole sci-fi genre these days too dark? Suzanne, go.
It's pushing it. I think that it's certainly the cutting-edge trend. I don't want to see it go any further than it has.
Okay, Mark Altman.
Well, I think it is getting too dark. I think it's important to have that sense of optimism that you have to a certain extent in the Star Trek shows, and a show like Babylon 5.
My favorite.
There you go.
Go ahead.
But the problem that we're having now is we live in very dark times where people are these conspiracy theories, they believe them, and I think we have to get away from that to a
Robert,
certain
you got
extent.
5 seconds.
Science fiction has always been dark. UFO, The Prisoner. I don't think it's any darker than it's ever been. We just need to see more.
Okay, there you go.
More.
Folks, don't go away. The X-Files phenomenon lives on and is stronger than ever. But are there too many X-File clones? We're right back to talk about it when SF Vortex returns. All right, welcome back to the Vortex. We are still in the war room with Robert Burnett, Suzanne Gibson, and Mr. Mark Altman is still here. All right, hard to miss last week's X-Files episode, totally devoted to Cancer Man. Now, if you folks at home missed it, here's a clip.
Your lies have killed more men in a day than I have in a lifetime. I've never killed anybody.
Maybe I'm not the liar.
I have a chance to go an entire lifetime without killing anybody or anything.
With all of our work in the past 30 years, all of our victories, if the world were to see this, it would destroy all we've gained in a few hours. Tonight, we have a new enemy.
There you go. Okay. Great show. It's one of my favorites. But as far as I'm concerned, an episode without Mulder, without Scully, for me, it's about as eventful as a Michael Jackson wedding night. Okay? Robert Burnett, what do you think, my friend?
Well, I think that the 4th season of the X-Files has dispensed with subtlety. It's hitting you over the head this season. But I do think that this episode was a great episode.
Really?
Liked it a lot.
Mark, you agree with that?
Yeah, I think when you get into the later seasons of a show, you have to take risks. You have to push the envelope of what the show is, and certainly this episode did it. The idea of Cancer Man as a frustrated novelist is inspired. Glenn Morgan wrote a terrific script. And frankly, you know, I'm just waiting for the episode with, you know, Shaggy and Velma and Scooby-Doo showing up. I mean, you know, obviously David Duchovny and Jillian want to go off and do movies. And if we're going to see more of these kind of stunt episodes. But if you're going to do it, something like this is a really fun way to do it.
I don't want to see more of it unless you're really progressing what's going on here. This works for me because you get the whole backstory about Cancer Man. You learn a lot about him. If I didn't get that, then it wouldn't have worked for me. Because I got a lot from him and learned what his motivations are, I did. Otherwise, I would need to see them every week.
I'm just really confused about the death of JFK. Was it aliens who killed him, or was it Cancer Man? Because Dark Skies is saying that, you know, I mean, Oliver Stone didn't have it right, I guess.
This is only television. This is not reality.
You know, how many more times are we going to have
I got to tell you, I actually find it semi-offensive that, you know, you're taking a great national tragedy and using it as the fodder for, you know, sci-fi fantasy.
But it's okay for Oliver Stone to take a great national tragedy and make a huge movie out of it?
I just, you know, that was the one thing that really got me going about this. I thought, oh my God, if I hear anything more about JFK, I would switch it off. But they did it well, and so I did watch. But I really think that this is a dead issue. I wish they'd let it die.
But they did add to the show's mythology. They did finally come out and say aliens exist.
That's
unless,
true.
of course, you do believe that all of this was, like, as Mark said, all his novel that he wrote, hence the title.
Well, as you said, the chapter headings. So maybe it is all his book.
Here's a man who needs less of a life and more fiction.
All right, let me bring and a guy who smiles less than Lance Henriksen on Millennium. And they should team up.
Let me bring this up. X-Files spin-offs, are there too many, Mark?
Yeah, you know, I got to tell you. I mean, I like X-Files, but there's a need in Hollywood.
It's
something
copycat TV.
To Xerox. It's this, you know, the Xerox files. That's what this is. With Dark Skies and
here. Like Xerox is you lose quality.
And you know that's why nobody's ever been able to rip off Star Trek. You know, because it's so hard to imitate. X-Files, the imitators just are not as successful. And, you know, I mean, turn Millennium into a musical.
Some people would say X-Files is an imitation of Kolchak the Night Stalker.
Well,
although I don't think so.
Well, to an extent
I don't think so either.
No, I don't think so. I think that Chris Carter's work is very cutting edge, and I think that's why people want to imitate it.
Well, I got to tell you, I was really offended. I was really offended by Entertainment Weekly about a year ago. They said that X-Files is now a better show than The Twilight Zone. You're comparing apples and oranges. That is an offensive concept to me because Twilight Zone, Ron Serling, you know, was the king of minimalist television, telling important allegories, and X-Files is just diverting fluff, conspiracy theories, stuff like that.
Mark, real quick.
I mean, it's you know, the people who believe that are nuts, this kind of stuff.
All right, that's it, folks. We got to get out of here. I want to thank my guests, Robert Burnett, Mark Altman, and Suzanne Gibson. Don't go away. We'll take a look at what you have to say about the world of sci-fi entertainment as the Vortex rolls on. All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's get to some viewer mail, shall we? Mike, the Birdman Bird, writes, "Hi, Roger. I love your show." Thanks, Mike. "But when is it going to have its own web page on Sci-Fi.com?" Mike, the answer to that question is right now. Check out the page at this address. There you have it. You can find out just about everything that deals with SF Vortex there, including future War Room topics and guests, rundowns for future episodes, and even post a message or two. Be sure to let us know what you think, folks. A number of you wrote in to thank us for previewing Highlander the series and Stan Kirsch last week. As far as adding comedy to the show, most of you agreed with William Sabinski from Palos Hills, Illinois. He says they should only do it a few times a season. Any more would seriously damage the premise of the series. If Duncan and company get too comedic, it would seriously detract from the real meaning of the series. Okay, well, tons of letters this week, so many, in fact, that we got a new email address. We're not going to be on next Friday night. We'll be on Wednesday night. Don't worry, you can still get your fix of SF Vortex. Until then, hey, by the way, before we get out of here, Linda Rungo and the gang at the MGM Grand Hotel. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Enter George Orwell's terrifying Tomorrowland and discover what's in store for your future. John Hurt stars in 1984 as Future Shock continues tonight at 1 a.m. Eastern. Now stay tuned for V the Series, Sci-Fi Channel next.